Hi there, this is Terry, and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. Now, one thing I find really daunting about the animation industry is just how varied the jobs are. So for instance, I love to draw, but I can't just get a job drawing. Studios need very specific roles like background painters, character designers, animators, storyboard artists, and more, but each of these roles are highly specialized and take years to master, and one thing I'm trying to figure out in school right now is where to really hone my skills. So, I thought I'd reach out to someone who's basically done it all and been massively successful doing so, and today I'm happy to be chatting with animation veteran Jim Bryson. So Jim graduated from Sheridan College back in 2001, and since then he's worked at studios in Toronto, the UK, and the US in a multitude of roles, including posing artist, animator, art director, character designer, and most recently as the producer for Niko and the Sword of Light for Amazon Prime, which he also won a Daytime Emmy for. But on the side, he just loves drawing, and you've likely seen some of his pieces on Instagram where he's amassed over 20,000 followers. So Jim, thank you so much for being here. How you doing this fine morning?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Terry.
Yeah, I'm really pumped to chat, especially because you're like kind of a jack of all trades sort of person versus like just specializing in one area. So I wanted to chat a little bit about how you decided to become an animator in the first place. Like what inspiration or what led you down this path in the first place?
I always wanted to be a character designer. That's the thing I kind of found the most fun at school. But when I graduated, there weren't like it was hard to get a job as a character designer. So I ended up as a in-betweener for a friend of mine who got a job as an animator.
Wait, so what made you decide to go to Sheridan College in the first place? Why did you want to become a character designer then?
Actually, yeah, no, when I was really young, I wanted to be an animator. I mean, that was kind of like, that was always what I wanted to do, character design, animation. But the thing is, like, that quickly changed because around the time I graduated is sort of when people had it in their minds that they weren't going to do 2D animation anymore. 3D animation was like the big thing. It was around the time when there was a studio in Hawaii that was doing a movie called Final Fantasy, which was supposed to be the greatest movie ever made. It was going to be so realistic. The characters were going to be so real, and all the people in the classes ahead of us were getting flown down to Hawaii to be trained on like 3D software and stuff. And we were just like, wow, everything is amazing. And then that movie came out and it was like the worst thing ever. And
I saw that movie in theaters and I loved it.
You did? I mean, I just mean the worst thing in terms of like, it was like a total flop at the box office.
Yeah.
And like they just, everything went sort of like full stop. Like, you know, studios were no longer taking students and like training them to do 3D and stuff. It was sort of like, by the time we graduated, it was just like, you know, we were on our own.
Yeah. So how did you, so your friend got a job as an animator and then was like, hey, Jim, I need some help over here. Like, how did that work out?
Yeah, it was just pure luck. I mean, my friend Robin, he was like, you know, like he was a really great animator, and I was friends with him, and he basically gave me the job because I was his friend, because I was not very good at in-betweening or cleanup, but it was good experience because it was the only place that was doing 2D animation. It was actually a Christian television station. They were creating like little cartoons. They were trying to make like a Christian version of like Looney Tunes.
Oh wow.
So I mean, it didn't pay very much, but it was probably the best experience because it was the only job that was actually, or the only studio really in town that was doing full 2D animation. Everyone else was sort of moving on to the early versions of Flash and like really kind of not fun stuff.
So like my experience in school right now is sometimes I feel a little anxious because when I look at the industry, like I really like stop motion and 2D drawn animation, but it seems like the industry is more about 3D and like tweening and stuff. Did you feel really anxious when you knew that people were being like flown down to Hawaii to work on 3D and you wanted to do character design? I mean, kind of where you've ended up now and looking back, how was that whole experience of going through school and being like, well, I want to be a character designer, but there doesn't seem to be much with that going on.
Yeah, it was weird. Like I worked. I found a job at. I'm trying to remember. Like this is a long time ago, but I sort of floated around a bit, like from studio to studio, and then I ended up going back to school for 3D animation, and I ended up graduating and working as a 3D animator for a number of years, couple years. And then I got a job at this studio. It was called Red Rover. And I just remember that the guy that owned that studio, his name was Andy Knight, and he would do these amazing storyboards. And every time I would get a shot, I would just download the whole storyboard, not just my shot, but I would just go through and I would just look at the whole storyboard, and it just like the drawings were so cool that that was sort of my inspiration to go back. Because initially I went into 3D because that's kind of where I thought the jobs were.
Yeah.
And sort of it's come full circle now. Like there's tons of work in 2D now. I mean, it's all Flash, but there's still aspects that are hand drawn.
Okay, cool. I mean, so it sounds like you came out of school and then you couldn't really find the thing you wanted to do, or the industry kept changing, I guess. So you went back to school and got a certificate or degree, I guess. And then did you feel comfortable kind of pursuing your career now that you had so many very varied skills? Because what I wanted to talk about is kind of the different skills and what it's like as in the different roles you've had. So, you know, you've been a posing artist, an animator, 3D animator, art director, character designer, like all these things. What do you think has enabled you to kind of go with the flow all this time?
I mean, most of them are just actually, I guess, like really like what I wanted to do was, I guess, like to make my own little films. And like I always, when I graduated, I was always trying to pick jobs where I would get to do as much as possible or have the best experience possible, not just doing one thing. So smaller studios. I ended up moving to the UK because my friend Adam got like some jobs doing these little short films for like Nickelodeon and some other broadcasters over there. So like it was just a good experience because you had to do everything. You had to come up with an idea, design it, pitch it to the people there, then do some storyboards, take it to the sound studio, record some voices of you acting like a maniac for a few hours, and then animate it.
You record your own voice?
Yeah. A lot of them we did our own voices. Some of them we had to have people, professionals do it, but a lot of the time it was just me and my buddy Adam doing voices. So like that was a great experience because it was just doing all aspects of production.
Sounds like a lot of fun, to be honest. Kind of sounds like school all over again too.
Yeah.
Bit.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun.
So how long did you stay in the UK for, working on Nickelodeon shorts?
About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then you moved back to Toronto, or you went to the US, or because I know you've been kind of all around the place.
Yeah. No, I moved back to Toronto. I've never lived in the US. I've done work for U.S. companies, but I never lived there. Yeah, I came back to Toronto, and oh man, it's hard to remember. What did I do next? Oh man,
I'm gonna pull up your
pull up my feed my
LinkedIn.
memory.
We have to really. Well, I know you've been a posing artist, and
Yeah.
can you kind of explain what that was all about? Like,
So that was like, I worked at a company called George Elliott doing posing for a bunch of shows, flash shows. So the cool thing about doing posing for flash shows is that that's essentially like the 2D animation thing. It's like you sort of take the storyboard poses and you sort of draw out the poses that the keys essentially that the animators will use for their animation. So that's a cool job. I mean, I always wanted to do anything that would allow me to draw stuff. So that's a good one.
So maybe can you just explain that a little bit more? So you're creating the poses for the animator to work into the sequence that person is animating?
Right. So you get like a storyboard, and the character will be like running from one end of the screen to the other, and then like maybe in the middle they'll do a backflip. So you need to draw a couple poses of them doing a backflip, right? Because they'll probably have like a run cycle built in that the animators can use, and so they'll just need those poses of the character doing a backflip.
I thought that was kind of the job of the animator, but is that like is that pretty common to have a posing artist work with an animator, or is that like specific to the studio you're working with?
Yeah, it's specific to the studio. Some studios don't do that. Some studios leave it up to the animators.
Gotcha. So I know you worked at Cup of Coffee in Toronto, which kind of has like a little special place in my heart because they do stop motion. Did you have any opportunity to work on any of their stop mo shorts over
No, that's something I've never done. That stop motion, I've never. I worked on a show called Ugly Americans at Cup of Coffee.
Right. What was did you see anything going on with stop motion while you were there? I don't know. It seems like you worked there in 2010 and then a couple times, it seems like, on a contract.
Yeah, I didn't actually work at the studio. I worked on my own. I took shots. The first season I was doing I was just designing key poses for the animation, and then the second season I was taking like chunks of the show and just doing the whole sequence.
Gotcha. So I also know you were an art director at a studio in Toronto as well. How did you? It was at Infinity Quick. How did you land that role? Because before then, it seems like you were kind of doing posing and animation. How did you branch out into that new field of work?
Oh, that was I found myself in the tech industry through a weird sort of happenstance. So when we were doing Niko and the Sort of Light, the comic book app, the animated comic, I met someone named Dale who was going to be the guy in charge of coding it. And we got along really well. We're still friends to this day. I'm still doing some stuff with him now. And he was unable to take on the project because at the last minute he got one of his ideas got funding, and some investors gave him some money to start this company, Infinity Quick. And so we kept in touch while I was working on Niko, and then towards the end of that contract, he asked me if I would help him with this project, and then that turned into we created this like messaging app which had animation in it and stuff, and then we ended up getting bought out by a company called Zynga,
Right.
and then I ended up working there, which I mean it was great. It was totally different from what I'm used to. It's like a tech company, like they make games and stuff, but I mean it was like working with like computer programmers and stuff, which was really cool.
How is kind of art direction for working on more like animated shows and things different than working with the art direction on games? Because I know that Zynga does like they have like poker games and like stuff like that. So that must be, at least from my view, I mean they're the Farmville people too, right? So
Yeah,
how
it,
is that different?
it was more like just working on a small team for a project that was completely separate from the company.
Hmm.
Um, they brought us on to do this like top secret thing, which it never ended up happening. They
Oh
they
no.
they
So
reshuffled the
secret
company.
doesn't happen.
I ended up it was actually perfect for me because like right before we got greenlit for Niko and the Sort of Light, I got laid off, and
Uh,
if I hadn't got laid off, I would have had to quit. So getting laid off is better than quitting because you get a nice like little package. So it was like perfect.
right, right. So would like because you've kind of gone with the flow, it seems like your friend has a connection over here, or you want to work on something over here. Do you always feel like you're on your toes, like trying to learn new skills to I guess compete with what you're doing, or do you feel like because you went to like Sheridan and got a degree, and then you went back for 3D, do you feel like you got like a really solid skill set to allow you to take on all these roles?
Uh, I think like I just kept trying to learn
Yeah.
stuff. I don't think when I left college I was particularly good at anything, to be honest with you.
Oh no.
Um,
How do you think you like if you could maybe not compare yourself, but how did you feel coming out of college? Like you just said you didn't feel like you were particularly good, but at the time, did you feel like you'd really developed your skills, or did you feel that way back then too?
yeah, no, I didn't think I had developed my skills at all. I mean, all I cared about was trying to find a job where I would learn something.
Ah,
I mean, there's tons of jobs where you can easily just stagnate. So I was just always trying to take something on that I would be able to learn and grow.
right. So I know we kind of chatted a little bit about this before, but where you are at right now, you mentioned to me that you found kind of a happy medium between working and drawing your own stuff. Can you kind of explain how you feel right now, or how you found that happy medium, or what that even means? Because some people that I talk to, their career is like number one. They're like very driven in a specific area, but I think at least from what I understand, your thinking or your the way you kind of have your career is a little bit different than that.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to do something independent. Uh, so I've always kind of treated uh, work as like, you know, if I can, take on jobs that don't take up all my time or don't take up all my creative energy so that I have time to work on my own stuff. Um, so, uh, so like right now, for example, I'm taking freelance work. I'm trying to avoid taking on a full-time studio job just because it takes up a lot of time and a lot of creative energy. And so
Yeah.
if I'm not, I want to have time to do my own things. So
So do you feel like maybe 50% of your time right now is devoted to freelance and 50% to independent projects? Is that kind of how your mix works?
Yeah, I mean it varies. Like right now, I'm spending more time on personal stuff than I am on freelance. Um, but in the beginning, years ago, sometimes I would take on tons of freelance, like anything I could get my hands on, just so I could make as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. And then when I have downtime, because most people in this industry, they don't typically work every month of the year. Usually, you take on a contract, you work 8 months, and then there'll be like 2 or 3 months where you are looking for the next gig or whatever. So I always treated it like if I'm getting a couple of jobs, then I'll just blitz through 2 3 jobs at a time, and then when I have 2 or 3 months off later in the year, I'm not like freaking out because I don't have any money.
Right.
So it's
With
trying to
your
balance.
with your personal projects, is the intention to make them lucrative as well, or is it purely to kind of as an outlet for your own creativity? Like do you and I mean with Niko and the sort of light, which I want to talk about soon, you I guess the intention was to turn it into somewhat of a business or to make some money off of it, even though it was a personal project. So is that kind of how you treat your personal projects? Like or are they kind of just for fun?
Yeah, I mean, if it's just like sketchbook stuff, that's mostly for fun. But if it's a project, uh, yeah, you'd want to make some money so that you can do another one. Um, so yeah, yeah, if it's a project, for sure, yeah, you got to make money.
Gotcha. Yeah. So about your kind of your personal sketchbook stuff, like I found you through Instagram a while ago, and I feel like you're kind of known for your monster art there. How do you? I mean, you've also like amassed 20,000 followers, which isn't a joke either. So how do you kind of treat Instagram? Is it just for fun? Is it like something that you leverage for getting new freelance projects or picking up contacts, or how is it? How do you treat Instagram overall, especially because you've built it up into kind of an asset for yourself?
Um, I am treating it like a little experiment where I do something and then I kind of am gauging how people will react to it and trying to get a better sense of like the types of things that people respond to and types of things people don't respond. Like a lot of the time, like I'll be like, I don't know if I should put this out, and then I put it out, and tons of people, lots of comments, tons of reaction. And then other times I'll be like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And then I put it out and it's just nothing, right? So, um, yeah, for me, I'm still kind of I'm not really an expert at that, but I'm just trying to figure it out.
So what have you learned from doing this so far? I mean, uh,
Biggest thing I've learned through the Jim Bob drawing show that we started
right.
doing a while ago, me and my friend Bobby, um, is that when you commit yourself to doing a piece of art at least once a week,
Yeah.
you improve a great
Huh.
deal. And not just doing it, but actually committing to like doing something and posting it finished, done, no no work in progress. You have to just finish it, right? Um, just the act of doing that every week, I've been astounded at how much I've learned in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that also. I did a 365-day project where I posted every day to Instagram, no matter what, and that led me on this path to go to school and be interviewing you. So I can attest to that. Is there anything that you think about in kind of what you've learned from your followers, like things that they like to see? Because like for instance, not every one of your posts has color. Not everyone is a fully rendered drawing. Some are sketches. Some, are there specific things that over time are going to do well, or that the kind of your following has led you to work on more versus something else?
Stuff I've learned. Okay, number one, I know what definitely doesn't work. If you put something up and it looks like an advertisement, like if there's any kind of words on it, like if it looks like you're trying to sell someone something,
yeah,
it does not. No one wants to see that. It's just nothing, dead air, crickets. If you put something up that has like a story to it, I think that seems to be something that people really like, but it has to also be visually striking as well. Like if you try and put up a comic panel, like if you imagine like a comic book and then you shrink it down and you try and put it up, it could be the greatest story in the world, but it's so hard to read that no one will bother reading it.
Yeah.
What else have I learned? I can't really think of anything else. People like to see production work sometimes, like if they feel like they're learning something from what you're showing them, like how to do. People seem to like. I've done like some sort of like character expression sheets. Those seem to be a hit for some reason.
So when you say something like story, do you mean like there's a story in the picture, like there's something happening, or do you also kind of write in the description section? Like, how do you explain? What is your take on story? Because at least from talking to a lot of different people and being in school, it seems like everybody kind of has a different take on what visual storytelling is to some degree.
Yeah, I think like if it's in the image, or if it's sometimes you'll have like little comics you can swipe through, which I've been seeing a lot of. So I've started to try and do more of that. Like I don't usually put. Sometimes you'll see people, they'll post an image and then there'll be a big long explanation in the comments. I don't think that really. I don't usually read that. Like,
Right.
I don't really usually read a huge long thing on Instagram. I'm kind of like just swiping through, right? So
Right.
I think it has to be in the image. It has to be something, even if it's just one image. If it tells a story, I think that is more engaging than. But then again, like, I mean, there's also amazing art. Like, you like it because it's just an amazing drawing. But I don't usually rely on that because that's a much harder thing to.
So no ads, include a story, make it visually striking somehow, and behind the scenes production work. I think those are good tips. I'm just looking at your Instagram right now, and a while ago you posted like a link to San Diego Comic-Con. Hey, we're going to be there, room 7AB, and you got 100 likes and 4 comments. And then the next day you posted a sketch of a lady with like people in her hair with the pen beside it on a piece of paper, and it has over 500 likes and like 30 comments. So that's like 5 times the engagement.
Yeah.
When you could say like, Niko and this sort of like took you like years of work, and you have so many like amazing concept pieces for it. Isn't
that weird?
It kind of like falls flat when you mention it
every time. So yeah, it's just funny to me. It's just weird. Like there's certain things that just are guaranteed to just bomb.
Yeah. Would you say that,
like I'm thinking like for a post, I'm gonna be like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna be at the corner of Main Street handing out cash," and just 0 likes. No one's.
Okay, I'll show up though. I need some cash. So would you say that Instagram or your website or Twitch or whatever has been an asset to you for your career, or has it more been like a place for you to hone your skills and learn and pick up new technical skills and things?
Nothing really for the career. I mean, I think it can be if you get like tons and tons of followers. You can get, you can somehow make a living. I haven't figured out how to make a living off of social media, but
like, have you met anybody through this that is kind of?
Well, I met you.
Well,
right? You found me on there, so
that's fair.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important. It's
once you meet Terry, it's all over.
That's it. It was all worth it. I'm gonna retire now.
Great. Hopefully, I can retire now too. I'm just starting out here. So let's talk a little bit about Niko, because that's kind of your claim to fame recently. It was a show on Amazon Prime. It's getting picked up for a second season. And it had kind of a non-conventional start. Sometimes when I talk to people about how they created a show, it was, they went through the whole pitching round. But you, I guess, and Bobby and the other people who put it together had kind of a different start to this. So how did Amazon find Niko? Because you were already kind of working on it.
So we set out to not make a show. That was not our goal in the beginning. We sat down and we said, we want to make a comic book where when you turn the pages, when you click on the panels, they come to life, they animate. We all wanted to see that.
Right, so a digital comic book.
Digital comic book, yeah. There had been comic books before where it was sort of like things would shift in and sort of shift around, but we wanted to see it come to life. We wanted to see it fully animated. And it was around the time when iPads were first coming out, and there was all this speculation that no one would buy books anymore and the iPad would completely replace books and everything, which never happened. But we just thought it was really exciting because there was this like new technology, and we had this idea of how to create something for it, and we thought it would be pretty cool, but it would be a ton of work. So we worked on it for a while, and then we did a Kickstarter, and we showed a trailer. We animated a trailer for it and some concepts, and we sort of showed, work in progress on it. But there was still a ton of work to do. So we raised a bunch of money on Kickstarter. And,
so when you were creating the concept, you were just kind of like hanging out in your apartment and working on this, or was this more of in a professional setting? Like it's just kind of you and a couple friends being like, let's do something cool?
Yeah, I mean, we were all friends, but it was professional in the sense that like we all relied on each other. We were all technically professionals, but it was fun too. But we definitely treated it like a real job. There was no like funny business. It was a big job, and it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun. So we did a Kickstarter, and then that's how Amazon found us, through the Kickstarter. Kickstarter is pretty cool if you do something that people respond to. It's really good for publicity.
So like Amazon saw it because like an article was written about it, or do they have kind of scouts that look for things like this? Do you know how they
possibly
found it? Yeah.
We got an article in TechCrunch. So maybe they found it on there. I actually don't know what led them to the Kickstarter, but that's what started sort of a really long. I mean, it took a long time. I mean, so we I mean, they saw it on there. We had to finish the comic. Then we released it on iTunes, and then we got a feature from Apple, which was like the best. Like one, I think, like we released it, and like, you know, we had like a few downloads or whatever, and then Bobby just ended up getting this email from Apple just saying like, oh, we would like to feature your thing on our Apple homepage, like just super nonchalant, like, oh, no big deal, just put it on the Apple homepage. And so then that was like pretty awesome, because like it you know, it made it like around the world, like just like that, like boom, all of a sudden it was like in these Arab countries, and like you know, like all these different crazy countries like all around the world. So we did that, and then that came out and everything, and then that started the long process of Amazon deciding to make a pilot.
Right. And then so how did that what was that experience like? I mean, Amazon contacted you and you're like, oh hey, great. Let's
Yeah,
make
they're
this
like,
the
you guys want
show.
to make a
And
show?
then
We're like, yeah, I think, all right, sure.
yeah, and then I read something like there were like 8 producers on the show. What was that kind of like? I mean, did you feel like you had total creative freedom, or like was it kind of a like all over the place, or
So I mean, there's the four, like me, Bobby, Kay, Adam. We're four. We sort of created it, so that's four right there. And then you had the Titmouse animation. So Chris and Shannon run Titmouse, so they were executive producers on the show, so that's 6. Then you had the showrunner, Rob, Hoagie, that's 7. And then who was the other one?
did you say yourself already?
Oh, maybe Ben. Ben was one of the producers. He at Titmouse, he was one of the producers. So that's 8. But it wasn't like, it looks like a lot of people, but really like it was really cool. Like Amazon was really good about like consulting us and everything. So it was fun.
So what was the day-to-day like working for Amazon Studios, like or Amazon Prime? Like what was your daily, what did it look like every day, I guess?
When it started off, it was sort of like just having meetings, just discussing what we thought it could be, what we thought the show could be, and Rob, the head writer, the showrunner, coming up with ideas for, you know, what we could do, and then, you know, as we would go through the production, we would get scripts, making notes and comments on the scripts, then getting some storyboards, getting cuts of the animatic, just going along like all the stages of production, just kind of making notes, stuff like that.
So were you doing any of the actual animation or like storyboards and stuff like that, or did you kind of hand that off to a team?
So I did some animation on the pilot. I animated the mugwump, which is a huge toad frog thing.
Right.
But for the most part, it was Titmouse Animation doing like all the animation. Like they did all the animation for the whole series. And then I did character design on the show.
Did you want to animate the mugwump, or was that like something that was handed off to you? Like
It was I didn't, but I had animated it for the app.
right.
And the director was like, I don't know if because it's such a complicated sort of character, and like I'd already animated before, and I really wanted it to look like the one in the app. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna animate, but it took so long. Like I think he just kind of saved like like a handful of scenes for me, and like I spent months just kind of toiling away on them, like in my free time.
Oh wow.
I think it took me like a whole summer just to animate like a handful of scenes. So
Free time.
yeah, forever.
So Niko was, it was nominated for an Annie and it won a Pixie and a Daytime Emmy. And it's renewed again. Like, was there a moment when you knew it was going to be successful? Like, were you like, yes, this is like really good what we're doing and unique and different and or I don't know. Did you ever think about that, or is it kind of just like I'm enjoying doing this thing I wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I was enjoying doing this thing. Like, I've always wanted to, you know, make a show, like a full-on show, and yeah, it was awesome. We always had a good response from it in terms of like people just would watch it and go, yeah, that was totally awesome, or my kid loves that. But the whole way through, like, we never thought it would go any further than say like we didn't even know if they were going to make a pilot. Like, there was so many, every step of the way was kind of like, yeah, no, we're probably not going to do it. And then something changed, like at the last minute, something happened, and then they ended up. So when they did the pilot, there was like sort of a mixed response, and we had to make some changes. We had to add some characters. We added a female character called Lyra, and then, but really, it was getting nominated for an Emmy for the pilot that convinced them to do the first season.
Oh, nice. So what does kind of like all that success feel like? Because I mean, there's like for me, there's a desire to be successful at some point. And how you like hold on to how you're gonna feel when you finally make it. And I guess you could say, you with Niko, you kind of made something that got a really great response and is seen by millions of people and all this stuff. How did you feel afterwards or through that experience? Did you like, I don't know.
It's a weird experience because it doesn't happen all at once. It's kind of like little wins stretched out over months, years, So it's not like there may be some like moment, like there was the moment that we got the green light to go ahead with the first season, which I remember the executive calling me, Melissa, who she couldn't get a hold of anyone else, so she just called me and she's like, all right, well, I can't get a hold of anyone else, but I just want to tell you that we're going ahead with the thing. So then I was like, that was awesome. So I had to track down everyone else to let them know. But
would you say that's the highlight of all the maybe experiences, or was there a different highlight?
Yeah, I don't know, like I guess looking back, probably the best feeling is really the anticipation when you're working on it, and you have that feeling of like excitement that you're working on something that you're excited about, and you want to see it just come out, to see just how people are going to react to it. I think that is sort of the best part. The wins always kind of happen so far afterwards, so far after you've been working on it, that it's kind of, it doesn't feel like something that's really happening to you. Like anytime you win an award for something, it's so far afterwards. It's just kind of like, I mean, it's cool, but it just kind of, you're kind of disconnected. Whereas like when you're working on it and you're like, oh, this is gonna be cool, when this comes out, I think it's gonna be awesome. I think it's gonna be awesome. Who knows what everyone else will think, but I think that's probably the highlight. It's just it's like building a sandcastle. You're just like, oh, it's gonna be so awesome. Like, I'm gonna make it so high, and then when you kick it over, it's kind of like, yeah, but it wasn't as good as I imagined.
Right. So the experience comes in just the process, I guess, which I mean, I think that's great. I mean, if you're having fun and enjoying what you're doing, what does it matter otherwise, right? Like,
Mhm.
so, I know you're working on more things now. Are you trying to replicate kind of the success you've experienced in the past, or are you going and searching for like exploring a new area of your art to try to put that out there or something? Like with your projects going forward, what is the goal?
Yeah, the I'm definitely exploring some new things. I definitely want to do something different than uh, the Niko world. I mean, when we designed that, I never felt like it was my kind of style. It was sort of like what the story dictated. I always felt like it should be kind of somewhat like a familiar, almost like Disney films that we watched when we grew up, the Niko kind of world. But then it was like it would feel familiar but be kind of crazy and alien a little bit. But it would always have that familiar kind of. That's why we always kind of referenced, in some places, sort of like a Disney aesthetic. And now with some of the new stuff I'm working on, it's kind of like finding different.
I think it's interesting you say that because the creature designs in Nico are so, like, I can see there's some Disney elements, but the creature designs are like so characteristic and reflective of your art that I find it not at all like that's what I think is unique about the show. Like all the characters or the monster designs are so interesting and unique and huge and all over the place sometimes. Um, but yeah, so maybe from what you've learned, if you're going to go about pitching another show, or at least just maybe throw some advice out there, how would you like? What are the steps that you go through? So, I know we chatted a little bit about this beforehand, and you said kind of pick something that you can stick with long term because with Nico, you spent years and years working on it. So if you kind of picked an idea that you just thought was cool for a little bit, you would have kind of burnt out or something. So if I were to pitch a show or you were to pitch another show or somebody else to pitch another show, what would you kind of tell them what to expect and what to put out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely no expert on this because there are so many ways that you could get a show. I mean, I just read the other day, some guy got a show picked up based on his Instagram stories. So
Was it Matt Lazell?
I can't remember what his name. It was called
Uh,
something Cat Kitty Battle
Battle
Kitty or
City? Yeah,
something.
that's Matt Lazell. He published like little animatics to his Instagram for a while with this orc and kitty, and now Netflix has picked him up
So
for a show.
awesome. Yeah, that's so great. Like so yeah, like I mean that's genius, right? Like I mean that is the perfect way to pitch a show in this day and age. You can tell right away. Like I mean, if you want to make the show, there it is. It's on. You just have to. Everyone has a phone. There's your pitch. So yeah, I mean, it's finding sneaky ways of standing out from the crowd, right? For Niko, it was doing a Kickstarter. I've seen since a bunch of other projects get picked up based on a Kickstarter. Um, so yeah, you have to you got to find a way to stand out. You, I don't think you can just do it the normal way of like putting together a pitch bible and walking into a studio, showing them, and going, "This is a thing I made." I just don't think it will. It's there's got to be something like where they go, "Wow, this is something I haven't seen before," right?
Right. I guess especially if those execs are going on Instagram and seeing ideas that are already being successfully I guess going viral or liked or whatever. Like if you walk in and you're like, I have an idea for a new show, they'll be like, well, why should we go with your show over all these other, like we have a Kickstarter over here that's got like, I don't know, how much money already in funding. Like if we just put our backing behind that, we know it's got some chances of success versus like this one man show type of thing. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, like someone told me this a long time ago, and they said the safest thing for an executive, if you put yourself in their position, the safest thing for them to do is to say no. Because when they say no, you leave, they keep their job, everything keeps going on normal. But as soon as they say yes, they're taking a huge risk, because if what you're selling them is a flop or you're unreliable or something goes wrong, now that it's them, sort of they're next on the line.
Right.
So you gotta really like do something crazy for them to want to give you $20 million or whatever huge amount of money it is that they're gonna have to invest.
So, for the actual show itself, I mean, there's a lot of different takes on how to make a great show. Some say, it's got to be character driven or story driven, or like what is your take on how to create like the formula for a successful show that's gonna, be go through a season or two?
It's tough because all the good ones, there was no formula before. There's always a formula afterwards. Like after SpongeBob came out, everyone would tell us, we want the next SpongeBob, you know? But
Right.
before there was SpongeBob, nobody wanted SpongeBob. Like even like the guy pitched it, he got rejected. So and then because if there's a formula for it, it means it's already been done, so it's not really. I think it's just, if you're trying to make a funny show, it's got to be funny. You've got to like the characters. It's got to be interesting. I don't like the idea of the the formulas and everything.
Right. I guess
Just
I guess from an exec standpoint, like what you just said, is they don't want to take a lot of risks, so they see that a formula is less risky because it already works. But you're also saying that that formula exists because it works for that idea, but it's not going to, like, we haven't had a SpongeBob since SpongeBob, right? Like the next show is going to be something totally different. If otherwise, it would just be SpongeBob all over again.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there's definitely shows that have been influenced by that. I guess like what I'm trying to say is like the more you can show them, the less they have to imagine it, the
Hmm.
better off you are, because it's all in the execution of the idea. If it's going to stand out, it's going to be how you tell the story. So that's why I think like the example of the guy putting these animatics on Instagram is such a great idea, because it's like they can see essentially the show, right? So the closer you can come to a final product, the better off you are. Even if you just do it crappily, like South Park style, like I mean that's like a great example of a show that it's all about the writing and and even the fact that it looks kind of crappy makes it funnier somehow.
Yeah.
So um, you know, I don't know I don't what was the question?
We're just talking about how to, like, if you're gonna pitch a show again, how would you do it? Like what would you put your faith into to make sure that it gets picked up or successful? I know that your kind of stance with Nico was like, I'm doing this regardless. So if other people want to chip in, like Amazon, like sure, help me back it, but it's happening, right? Like,
So that was a good example of like we were gonna make it anyways, and our goal wasn't even to make a show in the beginning, but our goal was to have something finished in the end. So I think that helped us, and then also the fact that it was a successful app helped us. So that's a weird way to do it, but like for example, if you can kind of get them to think that this is something that you're making no matter what, it's very appealing to them because it's kind of like then it's sort of like this moving target that they don't if they don't act within a certain amount of time, they're going to miss it, and it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep generating steam and getting more popular. That's why I think YouTube's a really good thing. Like if you can get something going on YouTube, that's why social media is so important, right? Like you can potentially build an audience on there. If you can bring an audience along, you can say, I'm not just pitching the show, I already have an audience built in. That's super valuable.
Yeah.
Because
Cool.
it shows people like it already.
I do have some questions based on your experience in the industry a little bit, so maybe we can just switch back to that. So I know that you've worked for studios in the UK and Toronto and the US. Is there a big difference you've noticed about the industries in these different countries? Like, from my understanding, Toronto and Canada is kind of like a service hub for the US, and then UK is kind of like almost like an incubator for like cool ideas. I'm not too sure if that's right, but like you've had experience working in all three industries, so like maybe you can give your take.
So my experience working in Toronto has been that Toronto is essentially service work for there are some Canadian shows, but mostly for American shows. I mean, that's just my experience. When I worked in England, it felt like there was a lot more small independent contracts for kind of weird and interesting ideas. There's just different opportunities there for doing stuff that was a little bit less like when you work in Toronto, everything is so the reason the work is here is because of the tax breaks, and so in order to qualify for tax breaks, everything is very regimented in a certain way. So you only get that kind of work where you're essentially doing service work jobs for big productions in the States, generally. That's just my experience. And then man,
So if you wanted to work on more independent and creative projects, would you start seeking work in the UK or the US, or would you stay here and just kind of go with the flow and see how because I guess from your experience, you kind of just ended up in the UK, right? Like, but your intent was also to work on like creative things where you could learn.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like where the opportunities sort of show themselves. I mean, I think like everyone's going to have a slightly different experience, but my experience has just sort of been like, oh, here's an opportunity. Let's see where this takes us. But nowadays it's different. Like like when I was younger, like you didn't get jobs from social media. It was all word of mouth. It was all people you know. So it's so different now. I think like going to these conventions, like going to Comic-Con and all these art-related conventions is a good way to find opportunities. But yeah, it's way different now. Way different.
I also wanted to ask you about the Jim Bob drawing show. Kind of what was the purpose behind starting that? Because it's also been like an an Instagram that has taken off, and also on YouTube, I think too, right? Like so, and you have like 16,000 followers on Instagram. So why did you start that in the first place? Because I from my understanding, it's kind of just like a fun little side project that you do, right?
Yeah, it was for fun. We started it. I used to go over to Bobby and Kay's studio, Imaginism Studios, and we would get together for these little, like, we would just hang out and draw, right? And sorry, it was just breaking up there. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Yeah, so we would get together and we would just draw, and they had this little thing where they would pull random words out of jars. And I just thought it was kind of interesting because I never did that before. And then we just decided let's just record it, and it not only was it fun, but I just like I said, like you feel like it's a really good exercise. And then all these people started joining us. We started off with, we would record videos, but I mean that's a lot of work. So right now we're just doing the Instagram thing, right. And so it's just a fun thing, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it. So I'm still doing it. Bobby's like started his own convention. Have you heard of Lightbox?
Yeah, I have. I also follow him, and he
That's
seems
awesome.
like he's always crazy busy with something.
Yeah. So he's doing something insane. He started his own Comic-Con essentially, which I'm going to that. I think it's gonna be awesome. Like, yeah. So the thing is, like, every week it's like random words out of a jar. And the cool thing about it that I hadn't anticipated when we started was that, like, a lot of the time when you're starting out and you're doing social media, you're kind of like, it's discouraging because you post artwork and no one sees it because you have 10 followers, right? So right. It's cool because all these people have sort of, there's this little community around it, and everyone checks out everyone's work, and it's just a cool kind of thing where, people, and I get a kick out of seeing all the artwork every week, all the different ideas.
Sweet. Yeah. So, well, I think it's that's really cool, and it's like interesting how you just kind of started drawing and you're getting such a positive response to it. Yeah, so I kind of one last question to finish this up, unless you have any kind of extra stories or things you want to share, but it's like we've talked a bunch about social media, and I know that you graduated Sheridan in 2001 when, Instagram wasn't really a thing. Back then it was like blogging, and then DeviantArt, and then Twitter, and now there's Instagram. What's your kind of like take on all this? And also kind of, you have to, I guess you've had to move around your artistic assets from one social media to the next over the years. And I know you also are trying to like experiment with Twitch and seeing how that's going. And you also have YouTube and stuff. So what is your take on all this? Do kind of artists keep having to move around strategically to see where all the attention is going? Or should you just kind of pick one format and go with it? I don't know, like you've kind of seen it all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely no expert on this. I mean, I just look at it as a big experiment, and I just play around with some of the stuff. Like I'm playing around with Twitch because it's a way to just show. Sometimes people like to watch you draw, and I don't want to like sit there and edit the videos and do all this work. I just want to like turn on the camera and then like just draw and then have it just appear on the internet. And so it so far is achieving that, and so I kind of like that, and but I only have like a few followers, so it's just, I'm just putting it out there, and it stays on there for a while. I think it stays on there for a month, so people can see if they want to watch me draw. I mean, some people like to watch that, to see the process. And then for the other ones, it's like mostly I just do Instagram. I mean, I try not, like, it can be very time consuming, like using all these different things. So I try and do it so it, like, I don't really go on Facebook that much. So like if I post something on Instagram, it will automatically post it on Facebook for me. Because yeah, you can spend your life just going from one to the other and, you know, never achieving anything.
Fair enough. Yeah. Cool. So unless you have any other stories or pieces of tidbits or whatnot, I think I'm pretty satisfied with our chat.
All right. Yeah, no, I think I'm good.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really great to hear your experience, and I really like what you said about kind of the pitch and your experience with Niko, and like also kind of how you figured out Instagram. And yeah, I think it's really cool.
Oh, thanks a lot for having me on, Terry.
All right. So if you want to get in touch with Jim, I'm going to include a bunch of links in the description to his Instagram, to the Jim Bob Drawing Show, to his Twitch, and also to Niko and the Sword of Light on iTunes and Amazon Prime. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in again. Thank you. Okay, bye.